Hey, good morning, afternoon, evening, you guys, wherever you are in the world. Always good to see you. I can't see you, but I can hear from you. So if you don't mind, just tell us where you are and who you are and what you're doing in the chat because I like to kind of get the feeling like I'm reaching out to you guys and I know who you are. So we're here. Look, summer is barreling along. Unfortunately for the school kids, they're looking at getting back to school. Wow, that's terrible. At the 5th of August, in my day, we didn't go back to school until September, but now everybody's going back to school in mid August. And of course, right now, the big deal is the Olympics. I saw Joe McNally is there shooting, which is really awesome. You've seen,
Awesome.
yeah, you go look at his Instagram. He's got some really cool photos there. And, Joe's a friend of AYP. We've had him on the show, we've interviewed him. He's an amazing photographer. Check him out. And the whole story of the Olympics, I just find fascinating just to see the behind the scenes of what happens with these incredible athletes and where they came from and the trials and things they have to overcome. Okay, so here we go. We've got an Ankit in India. Hello, Ankit in Maracay. Sorry, I'm going to mess that up. In Brazil. Hey, I was watching the Brazilian skateboarders. Wow, congrats. Right? You got some amazing skateboarders there. This is the first year in the Olympics they have skateboarding and surfing. Now, I'm not a skateboarder, my kids are. I'm a surfer, so I appreciate skateboarding, and I think it's kind of an amazing sport to add to the Olympics. Obviously, incredible photo opportunity with skateboarding, with both of them. And then Joe is from Louisiana. Hey, Joe, good to see you here. Mike in Hollywood. You're not very far away, Mike, about 5 hours south of where I am. And cool, you guys. Well, I'm going to be talking to you really. I'm going to tell you this is probably my favorite subject, which is how to get your work out to the world. And it's so important because if you don't do that, you're just sitting on stuff in your hard drive or in shoe boxes or whatever, and it's not a good feeling. So let's do this. Let me get officially started here. I'm Marc Silber. I'm an author, photographer, educator here in Carmel, California. And our show today is brought to you by our friends at Bay Photo Lab. Now, talk about getting your work out to the world. The best way to do that, and the first way that you should be doing it, is by getting prints made. And you can see you can get, these are all sorts of different prints you can get made with them, but one of them is books. I love making books. We're going to talk about that in the show here. And they're 25% off on Bay books and albums. You can make various different albums. You can see the book here. I guess you can't see my cursor, but it's various different books and albums. 25% off. You can see the code on there. You guys should make something. Definitely make something. Make a print of some kind. And then 25% on all photographic prints. So any other kind of print you want to make, you're going to get 25% off on that. Do yourself a favor, make some prints, put them on your wall, and that is the first way to share your work. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. 20% off on drum scans. Now, this is for people like me who have a lot of negatives. Not negative people, but people who have negatives and want to get them into the digital world. You got to have high quality scans because the thing is you're going to utilize those over and over again. And if you have a crummy scan, it's no good, right? It's like you're just going to get a bad reproduction. You want high quality scans, 20% off. This is top of the line. Their Tango drum scanner is awesome. So those are some of the things that you can get at Bay Photo, and you can also get 25% off on your first order no matter what it is, okay? Boom. Let's see who else has joined us here. So Deacon, you're in Nepal. Wow, that's amazing. And then Groove Hole, is that right? Okay. Street photographer from New York. Well, thank you for being inspired. I appreciate that. That's what I like to do. Okay, talk about inspiration. So let's look at where we're going here. If you guys have
Have
been
we made sure people
Oh,
subscribe?
you're so smart, and that's why I always forget this. Thank you, Jared. Subscribe, enable the bell so you don't miss any of our episodes, okay? Also, give us a thumbs up if you like what we're doing here, because that somehow magically helps YouTube tell people that they ought to join us. Okay, we're going to start here. How many of you guys have read this book by Marc Silber called Advancing Your Photography? If you have, just give me a thumbs up. It's a good book, I got to tell you. Even if I didn't write it, I would think it's a good book because it really does cover the full range of what we're doing with photography and creativity. So that goes back to this illustration right here. Visualization is your first and primary action when you're photographing. You get an idea. What do I want to photograph? And you go from there, you go to your equipment, and that's, obviously what equipment you're going to choose has to do with what you visualize. If you don't know what you're going to shoot, what are you going to bring with you? So if I'm going to shoot, photography for my surfboard, I'm going to bring a GoPro. I'm not going to bring a expensive DSLR or mirrorless camera. So visualization drives your equipment. You got to know how to use your equipment, and then you capture it, which is essentially lighting and composition are the two most important components in capturing. Then you process your image. That's going through whatever editing processing platform you're using, Lightroom, Capture One, Photoshop, whatever it is, you process your image. There's no image that I don't process. And just going back to the darkroom days, you make a negative and then you make a print, and that's your processing. And then the final stage of this is sharing. Now, those are 5 stages of photography, and they go around in a loop because as you do that, as you share your work, you also visualize how do people respond to your work. And that's really important to know what's your audience connecting with. Thank you, Ankit. I'm glad you like the book. So you want to be working on all 5 stages. They work together. They interact. And we're going to talk about the sharing stage right now. But remember, visualization drives every one of these stages. So even in terms of sharing, you have to visualize, what do you want? Like, what are you putting together? Are you putting together a book? Are you printing stuff for your wall? Are you putting together an exhibit? Well, how do you want the exhibit to look? How many photographs are going to be in it? If it's a book, how many pages is it going to have? What's the placement of your photographs on the page? That's all part of visualization. But there's even a beginning part to visualization. Let me open this up here. So here's my book. This is the chapter on sharing your work. Let me get better oriented here. Let's get rid of some of these things here I don't need. There we go. Okay. So this is what begins the chapter. This is me. I was setting up an exhibit, and somebody photographed this. It was really a fun exhibit. I'll show you some of these photographs specifically here in a minute. Sharing your work is a really fun thing because this is where you've done all the hard work. You've captured the photographs, you printed them, you framed them. In my case, in this show here, I was working with a gallery. They did all the framing, thankfully, because I do not frame. I don't like framing. I always work with a framer. And, this quote here from Pablo Picasso, the purpose of art is washing the dust of daily life off our souls. Let me read that again better. The purpose of art is washing the dust of daily life off our souls. You get a little dusty every day, right? The stuff that kicks in, life has its kind of moments. Well, the purpose of art is to wash that off. So when as artists, we're showing people our work, it allows them a moment to get away from the dustiness and the troubles of life and look at something different than what they would normally see. You're giving them a window into what you saw and what you felt. That's really important, and that's the purpose. And don't underrate that as an artist. You are an artist, you have a message, get it out to the world. Don't keep it to yourself. It's sort of like if you were a really good cook and you discovered these various dishes and you never cooked them for anybody else. How would you feel? Wouldn't it be a little bit like, how many times can you cook pesto for yourself and enjoy it? I enjoy making pesto. It's one of the few dishes I can make, and I'm pretty good at it because I see what happens to people, and it just explodes in their mouth. The taste buds. It's got a lot of garlic, basil, Parmesan cheese. It's like, wow, and you have salad and French bread. It's like a full meal. It's pretty amazing. But I'm sharing it with others, and I can see their response. And that's what getting your work out to the world is all about. Now, the first thing I bring up in this chapter is you have to visualize yourself. What is your vision of yourself as an artist? Where are you going as a photographer? Every photographer, every great artist has a certain vision that they've kind of put themselves in, and what we call how they've branded themselves. Branding is basically, the distinctive quality of a person or obviously a company. What do you think of when I mention these names? The Beatles, right? This cool rock group, that legendary group. There's a brand that kind of comes to your mind, right? I can mention more modern groups like the Foo Fighters. What comes to mind there? You might have a vision of these guys. What comes to mind with these different photographers like Henri Cartier-Bresson was known to be a street photographer. Annie Leibovitz, a celebrity photographer. Yes, she has other genres that she's worked in and so forth, but she's really known. That's her brand. Bob Holmes is a travel photographer. He also, takes what he has learned from travel photography, and now he photographs wineries. It's another genre, but they're very closely related. And then, Johann Vermeer, a painter, he was known for painting natural everyday life. So you should decide, and I do advise that you narrow it down to one genre that you really want to be known for. That's you're going to be your brand. Your brand should look different than everybody else's. If you try to go out and photograph like someone else, guess what? It's not going to be genuine. Now, you may say, well, Mark, you're always talking about, getting inspired by other people's work. Yes, you should get inspired, but it doesn't mean you want to copy them, and it doesn't mean you're trying to be another one of those. I love Henri Cartier-Bresson, and I've learned a lot from him, but I feel like I have a different voice than he does. So think about that. That's your first step with getting your work out to the world, is like where you want to go from there. Now, obviously, I'm not going to talk about social media very much, but that's kind of the first thing that we think of in terms of sharing your work. You've heard me say this before. I consider it really a fast food way of sharing. It's not like sitting down and making a great meal that's, everybody's going to sit at a table and, be around a table with candlelight and, the full ambiance. It's fast food. It's going to be going by really fast. So, okay, fine, put it up there, but don't make that your primary focus at all. These are some tips in the book about using, social media with Lightroom, which makes it handy. You should create a gallery. I have a SmugMug gallery. I really like it. I like SmugMug. And you put your best work up. I need to actually go through mine and update it. You want to basically, you don't have to have 1 million photographs. In fact, people are going to just burn out I've seen these galleries and it's just page after page after page. It gets to be a burnout. So pick even your top 10 and put them in your online gallery. Keep it really clean. If you get a better photograph, you can maybe pull one out and exchange it. But an online gallery is important, especially because people can order their prints from you. Excuse me. That's a big part of sharing your work. When I launched my career, I launched my career as a photographer pretty late in life. I'd actually had a full career as a management consultant, and I thought, okay, I want to go back to connecting the dots. I did go to art school. I changed my career path. I ended up being a management consultant. And I felt like it was an unfulfilled part of my life. So I relaunched myself fairly late in life. And I made a gallery, online gallery. I started having shows. I got into some magazines. It was really thrilling to do that. So making prints, that's absolutely the number one way that you should be sharing your work, which is prints, frame them, put them on your wall. And whether it's you have a tiny apartment or you have a big house, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like if you walk around my house, I'm the featured artist here. There are one or two other artists in the house, but most of the prints you're going to see on the wall are mine. Okay, why not? It's your gallery. I want you guys to be doing that. And if you're not doing it, start doing it. Okay, make prints, get them framed. Framing, just adds that je ne sais quoi. It dresses it up. It makes it formal, and it makes it look like, you've got a finished piece of work there. Okay, so prints, you got to do that. I want you guys to do that. That's why I'm recommending Bay Photo Lab, because they will make great prints for you, and they're not that expensive, and they have great customer service. You want to show your work, I give you a whole series of steps of how to do that. I'm not going to really go into much detail here, but what you want to do, that was in the San Francisco Chronicle for one of my shows. What you want to do is basically put together, if you're going to do a show, put together your best work, that represents whatever the story is that you're trying to tell. It could be a range of your photographs. My favorite exhibit so far that I've done is this one here. And this was about my trip, and you can read about it in the book Create. When I was a high school student to a remote region of Mexico, I took this camera here. It's a Rolleiflex. You see that? It's got two lenses. I took that with dozens of rolls of film, and it was really amazing that I got inside the life of these people. Now you notice, hey, if I were critiquing this photograph, I'd say, not bad. You got this guy doing something. He's not posing. This is his natural environment. This is a schoolroom. And if I look at my own photographs objectively, I'm kind of impressed, because I was high school, 17 or 16 years old. I guess I was 17. And, I hadn't honed my communication skills, but somehow I managed to put these guys at ease enough to allow me to photograph them as though I'm not there. This became my new favorite photograph. There's a story behind this. The story is that the curator of the gallery where I was showing these, putting this exhibit together, had looked at, some of my photographs and asked me, wait a minute, what else have you got here? And I had a bunch that I hadn't made prints of. I made contact prints. If you don't know what those are, they're basically, in this case, little square prints of the negatives. And this was one of them. I'd never printed this before. I'd never done anything with this photograph. But because he identified it, we went through, all these contact sheets, and we identified about 30 of them. He pulled this one, and I printed it. I was like, wow, I love this print. I love this photograph. He's a cowboy in Mexico. It could be the Old West in California, or, in our western states. This was, late 60s in this remote region of Mexico. And again, he doesn't look like he sees that I'm photographing him. He's not being self-conscious. He's not posing. He's just kind of opening up and being himself. Another one, this was the little, quote, village that we were staying in. And he was one of the boys in this family. The family had about 8 children. We ate with them. They had a little cocina, a little kitchen, and they had a herd of goats. So we had some goat's milk every now and then, and once or twice, I think, they slaughtered 1 or 2 of the goats, and we had smoked goat, which wasn't my favorite, but that was interesting. Again, he's sort of, relaxed. He's being himself. These were some girls coming by the little village hut, and it looks like they have, some oranges. They seem a little shy, but they don't act like, again, they're paying that much attention to me. They're looking at what's going on with the mother in the kitchen here. There's, this was one of the other kids. His name is Agrippino. We were making tile for the adobe roof, or not the adobe roof, but a tile roof. We built our own adobe hut, and he's making this. He puts the clay in the frame, and then later on we built a fire. This was what happens once you make enough of these. They build a bonfire over it. That's how they fire it, which means it hardens it, and they just build a bonfire over it at night. I think there were 4 or 5 of these, and then that burns down, and then we put all those on the roof. It was really amazing to learn these skills. Absolutely amazing. I could go out and build a hut. I could build an adobe house to this day. Here's, I think I skipped one here. There's Fausto. Oh, okay, that's the one I wanted. This is Fausto. He was one of the workers, and we built everything here. We made the adobe here. My other friend, who is a photographer, made this door. He was quite a craftsman. We hewed the wood. He carved the wood here. We had some hinges. And then Fausto posed for me. He didn't really pose. He was just in the window, and I got this photograph of him. Again, if it was not my work, I'd say that's not a bad photo, And it tells the story of this whole time period. What was going on here. I'm going backwards. Sorry. There's a trip that I took on foot. I took an 80-mile, my own little backpacking trip by myself during kind of the middle of this stay there. And this was, one of the kids riding a horse. Now, it's high noon. It's in the middle of the day. You can see from the highlights on the sand, it is really bright. And so I knew enough to be able to photograph him and expose it without blowing out my highlights. But also, fortunately, he had his hat on, so his face is shaded. Otherwise, he would have had these harsh shadows. And that is one of the things you want to do when you are in bright sun. We talk about, it's great to photograph in the golden hours. But what about in the middle of the day? You come across something like this, you're not going to not photograph it. So just notice your highlights, don't blow them out, and look at your subject and make sure they're shade. Otherwise, you're going to get, like I said, these harsh shadows. And I had that all dialed in at age 17, not bad. And these were some kids on that same hiking trip on a path. The one on the left's a little more self-conscious than the one on the right who's looking at me. But again, look at the culture here. They're traveling to school, I believe. They're white shirts. There's a lot of contrast here just in the photograph. The white shirts against the kind of darker background, really worked. And this was one of the only color photographs I took, borrowed from the guy who was heading up this project. He had a Nikon F. I borrowed it for an afternoon with a couple of rolls of Ektachrome color slide film. and found this church door. That blue is the blue in the door. That's not processed blue. It's not really highlighted. There's very little processing in this from the actual slide. It was scanned, and then there's a subtle amount of processing. I think I had to tone down. There's a little blown out here on the right here, but otherwise it's pretty much true to what was going on there. So those were some of the images that I put in that exhibit. And then just find ways, once you have your exhibit, there's a lot of stuff I talk about in this chapter you should read. You want to make it really a great show. And people come to shows, exhibits, you want to serve them refreshments. You want to make it special for them. You also want to promote your show, and that was one way I did in the newspaper. This is another way, which was the gallery did this for me. They printed a postcard, and it had 2 of the prints on it, and it's had all the information, and then they were hand addressed. This is actually, by the way, when you hand address things, people are much more likely to open it. Don't you? If you go to your mailbox and there's a hand addressed card, aren't you going to look at it? So that's actually an important thing, even hand addressing a letter. By the way, that's a really important promotional action. We forget about regular snail mail. Is actually pretty powerful. And especially if you hand write a note, or even if you type something and then write something on the side, it will give it more life. Don't forget about that as a promotional tool. It's pretty magical. Okay, so you want to promote your show, you want to get it out there, and then make it really special. Work with the gallery to serve refreshments and make it memorable. And you want to sell your work, so you want people hanging around. Make it enticing and interesting for them to hang around. What else? So last thing here, I want you to take this sign to heart here. Beware of vampire. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to switch back. Boom. There we go. This is in my book. Beware of vampires. There are vampires out there. There's people going to shoot you down. There's people going to criticize you. Let it roll. I mean, they criticize me. They criticize my books. They criticize whatever. I get critical remarks on videos. Not from you guys, I bet. Let it roll. Here's the thing. When you're going to put your work out to the world, you are facing out to the world. And there is a small percentage of our population, in any given population, 20% are what we call antisocial, which means they shoot down anything that they feel is somehow threatening to them. Let it go. So this quote is attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson. I can't promise you that he wrote it. I researched it, and I actually went to an expert on Emerson. He said he hadn't seen it before, but he wasn't sure that it was or wasn't. But anyway, this is the quote. Whatever you do, you need courage. Whatever course you decide upon, there will always be someone to tell you that you're wrong. And remember that. You're going to put your work out. You're going to write a book. You're going to put it on the wall. You're going to put it in an exhibit. You're going to put it online. Do it. Skip the vampires. Okay? I mean, I really, really want you to take that to heart, because if you listen to them, you have bought into their BS, and it will stop you from doing more work. And that's the exact opposite of where I want you to go. My intention with this show, my intention with the book, is to inspire you. If you're not already doing these things, I want to inspire you to do something to get your work out to the world. And maybe the simplest thing that you can do, I do this every year, is I make cards. These are holiday cards we make every year, and I send them out to, friends and family. This is a print of Matterhorn a few years ago, and I get these printed at Bay Photo Lab. We put a message inside, printed message, but we always write on it as well. and you make as many. This is a good way for people to get to know your work, and you even have your link to your website right here. So who knows? They get inspired. That's easy. Here's another one from another year. A deer in Yosemite, California. Same thing. And this one I put a quote from John Muir, who was the one who created our national park system and basically saved Yosemite from being destroyed. So that's a quote in there that's very meaningful to me. This is another one from a while ago. A simple, these are all, again, during the holiday times. Make some cards. And the other thing you can do, and I see this, different photographers do this, make a card that shows one of your prints and send it out to potential clients. Just keep them warmed up. And you can absolutely write a handwritten note on there. HP said handwriting has twice the impact, maybe 10 times as much, because you are, I'd say, 10 times more likely. If I get some mail and I'm sifting through and I'm throwing the junk mail away, and there's anything with my name written, handwritten, I'm going to open it. If they took the time, something tells me I'm going to check it. Sometimes it's just junk mail inside there, which is kind of a waste. But if people open it and there's a beautiful photograph, beauty really translates, and that's the thing with marketing. You should always use your photographs in your marketing. Now, it's as simple as when let's say you're reaching out to someone, even if you're texting them, put one of your photographs in there. Here's a little trick that I've learned. When you run into something where you're reaching out to people, and maybe you're trying to sell them or you're trying to engage them in something, you want to have a discussion with them, maybe about doing a show or whatever it is, and they stop answering. You know how frustrating that can be? They just stop. They could have stopped for any number of reasons. They just didn't want to look at their phone that day, or they're bombarded with too many other emails or whatever. The coolest thing and the simplest thing, and I do this all the time, is just send them a photograph. Bam! You will be amazed. They come back to you. Oh, Mark, yeah, I've been meaning to get back to you. I'm sorry, and that's a great photograph. It sparks the whole thing. This thing about a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think it's worth way more than 1,000 words, because it's your stamp on there. So try that sometime. But also, if you're outreaching, like if you're going to email a gallery about doing an exhibit, well, of course, and show them one of your photographs. Just put it in the email. Don't bombard them with too many things, though. Okay? Keep it very simple. Keep it very direct. And we have a note here from Prabhu. Okay, I hope I didn't mess your name up. I would love to send some handwritten postcards of my photography to my grandfather, but I don't think Bay Photo will operate in India. Oh, it might actually. I think they do. I think Bay Photo does. Check it out. Go to their website. I'm pretty sure they do. And if they don't, I'm sure you can find a local printer. Okay, these are some of the main points I wanted to go over with you guys. If you have some questions, let's take them up now. But I can't tell you how important it is. Have any of you gotten to the point where you want to show your work to the world, but for some reason you've hesitated? I'd like to know what concerns you have, because we can talk about that. This is so much a part of the creative process. If you don't get to the final stage of sharing your work, it's like the satisfaction isn't gonna sparkle up, isn't gonna bubble up. It isn't gonna resonate with the rest of the world. So I'd love to hear. We've got a few minutes. Why don't you guys tell me if you have concerns? Let me know. Jared, did I miss anybody's comments or questions? I haven't been looking.
No.
Okay.
While we're waiting for some more questions, we could go over. Sandy had one. It's not necessarily specifically about sharing, but we can talk about it quick while other people are entering in their
Let's
questions.
put
What
his.
do you think about? Yeah. So what do you think about AI based software, and how it's a part of photography now, and where you think it's going in the future?
Hey, Sandy. Well, AI. I mean, is that ever going to really replace a photographer? I look at it like this. Okay, if I have something that can help me and assist me in my creativity, and it actually is legitimately going to do that, I'm going to utilize it. But I'm going to always reserve whatever that AI is. I still have the final say, right? You should. Um, for instance, these iPhones are pretty amazing, and you can press in the editing. You just press one thing, and it'll do a suggested edit. It's pretty good, gotta say. But I usually tweak it anyway. But it's kind of impressive, especially in low light situations or whatnot. So, Sandy, I look at it as a tool. I mean, if you look at the progress of photography from film days where everything was manual, and then you had to go to your dark room, and there was no automaticity whatsoever. I didn't even own. There were meters that you could use in the darkroom. I never really owned one of those. I think I tried one. I just kind of gave up on it because I couldn't get it to work. So it was all done by my own eye and my own sense of what I felt was a proper exposure. I do have meters. Obviously, I have light meters. Both these cameras have light meters on them. But I also knew where I was exposing. And so we've gone from that to automatic cameras, to cameras that you can put on P or automatic and go out and press the button. Somewhere in between there is a happy medium. I expose in aperture priority, but I always look at it before I press the shutter, and I will almost always and invariably adjust with exposure compensation. So this is kind of a progression. Now, I hope photography doesn't get to the point, and I can see this as a trend, and I think we're unfortunately headed there, where you simply push the button and it essentially makes a film, a continuous exposure, many, many frames per second. And then it picks the one it thinks is the best out of all those 100, let's say, you shot. And then it says, here's your key photograph. I don't know, whatever criteria it's got. The subject's looking at you, maybe it's exposed right. I hope we don't get there, because I feel like that's really bypassing a lot of our decisions as artists. I don't believe in pressing the shutter more than you have to. I believe that you should, visualize the photograph, capture it, maybe capture it from different angles. That's great, but don't just go, which is essentially what AI is going to be doing. So let's try to hang on to our artistic judgment no matter what happens, is the way I look at it. Oh, okay. You can't share your work because there's a non-disclosure with your clients. Okay, I understand that, and I have those as well. And I don't share client work. Generally speaking, that's not the stuff that we're going for. So, Sandy, you just work around it and go out and I've seen your work is great. So you have plenty of non-disclosable photographs. So
Yeah, I
that
mean, having seen a lot of your work, I don't think that your problem is a shortage of work
no.
to share.
And don't worry about it. If you can't, yeah, you don't want to show your client's work, that's fine. I don't show client work unless they give me an approval for it, and that's just the way it is. You may not know this, by the way, that Ansel Adams was also an industrial photographer, a commercial photographer. He photographed for lots of commercial companies, IBM, Chevron, Standard Oil, and he didn't display that work. He didn't, obviously never showed a picture of a Standard Oil tanker or a oil refinery. but it's there, and he did it. And he said he enjoyed doing that work because it actually got him into situations where he wouldn't normally photograph. Now that work was shared to the world, but nobody knew. It didn't say Ansel Adams at the bottom of it. That's just, it's not your ideal as an artist to have work go out anonymously that nobody knows who you are. And that's really not what we're talking about when we're sharing. We're talking about sharing. Yeah, you want to say that the picture is your creation, not artificial intelligence. I think if we use it as a tool, and it's going to happen, fine. If it helps me take better photographs or we don't take photographs here at Advancing Your Photography, we make them. Automaticity is very interesting because if it helps you be a better determined, more self-determined photographer, it works and it's good. I drive a Tesla. Tesla has autopilot. Interesting. You can go down the freeway and it's on autopilot. You have to keep your hands on the wheel. But it makes decisions for me that I actually kind of like. It will see if a car pulls in front of me and slow down. It will speed up. It'll slow down. I hit the lane change. It'll find when it's safe to change lanes and it'll move over. If the traffic gets really slow and kind of bumper to bumper, it'll keep me going at a safe distance. Okay, but I still have to keep my hands on the wheel, and I still have to be responsible. And I think that's kind of where we want to go with it. So here's a question from Julian. I love printing, but Facebook, Instagram reaches further. Yeah, it does, but they're two different things, Julian, and keep them separate. Keep them in separate categories. Instagram and Facebook are going out like this, right? What do you think the average number of seconds that somebody's looking at your work? Maybe you get lucky and so they're going to look at it for a minute. A 60-second look's probably pretty long. If you put a print on the wall, the chances are people are going to stop and look at it. If you make a card, you've got a much higher chance of people actually, hey, this is cool. What did he send me? That's cool. I like that. If you put it in a book, you have an even higher chance. So keep them in different categories. Kind of like making a meal. If you thought of your main course is going to be your prints and books, and that's like the main course of your meal, and you have some appetizers, that could be your social media as an appetizer. You're not going to sit there and eat these little tiny, canopies and little tiny hot dogs and make a meal out of it. You ever done that? It's really unsatisfying. But it's okay if it appetizes, if it gets people, whets their appetite to want to see more of your work, go for it. By the way, I wanted to show you this. This is from our master class. This is, I worked with these 4 photographers in my master class, and we made a book. None of them had ever printed in a book before. We're doing this with AYP Plus right now. By the way, you guys, if you want to take your photography to the next level, you want to create a series of photographs, you want to get them critiqued, and you want to print them. That's what AYP Plus is all about. Jared, put the link in there so they can find it. But this is a really cool book called Through the Lens. It's got a description from me what this was all about. It's got a great quote from a Trey from the group Fish. Creativity is the antidote to destruction. I put that in there specifically because this was done during COVID. COVID was a very is still destructive time. So each of the photographers took whatever they wanted. This was from John, who photographed the river going through his local town. Very cool. I'm showing these really fast, but this deserves really taking a close look at. And then they also put text to describe and tell the story. There's a little bio at the end of each, and what footnotes on their photographs. So this was a great way to share their work as a team. This was Craig, who was basically highlighting North America, different North American scenes, the Rocky Mountains, rivers and oceans, telling his story as well. So each of these photographers put this together in this book, and that's a really fantastic way. And remember, Bay Photo, actually, you can make books with Bay Photo, so you could do this as well. Dan Milner recommends creating a book as your business card. So people get a 5-page book or 10-page, whatever it is, look through it and they can see what your work is all about. It's pretty cool.
Which someone in our group is going to be doing that with their project, kind of turning that into their business card.
Yeah, who is doing that?
So, Hector is.
Hector, that's right. Hector, and I don't know if you're on the broadcast here, but that's really cool. Yes, that's right. We were talking about it. So all these points I'm making lead to the same thing, which is you want to get your work out. You want to share it to the world. And if there's any one thing I would love to inspire you to do, is do that. Avoid the vampires, get your work out to the world. It's thrilling, it's fun. One of the things I enjoy about writing books is that I get to put my photographs in there. I get to put my images in there as illustrations. And I'm making a new book. It's called Forever Young. It's in progress. I have to find time to finish it. This is create. And the creative process for any kind of creativity follows that same series of 5 steps. Slightly different name, but it's the same thing. It starts with visualization, knowing your tools. Then you got to work your craft, whatever it is. If you're a writer, you got to write. If you're a musician, you got to play music. Work your craft. Then you edit. Editing is really important because you change things, you tweak it, and then you get your work out to the world. Still those 5 steps, even if you're a skateboarder. Aaron Cairo. Okay, so listen, you guys, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate having you here. I hope I am inspiring you. If I've inspired you a lot, please join us on AYP Plus. It's a great platform, great learning platform. Okay. And remember to subscribe, enable the bell. Yes, Jared?
I was just going to say, with AYP Plus, the other thing that Mark and I love is we get to talk with you guys.
Oh, that's right.
And we love doing that. Like, it's not like this where you're just hearing and we can only talk through chat.
Yeah.
We talk with you guys.
We open the microphone.
That's one of my favorite parts of it.
I agree. We open the microphone, open your camera. You guys can talk, share your work. And then also in the community, we're all going in the same direction. It's all like-minded people. There's no vampires in there. I guarantee it. Everybody is there because they want to enrich their photography, and also they're willing to help other photographers do the same and give feedback. And sometimes the feedback is like how you should sequence your photographs, because that's a whole, what goes in which sequence can tell a different story. So there you go. Okay, yeah, time to start working on making my handwriting legible. Maybe it's a very, who knows? We have one of our members in the AYP Plus, Amy, who writes on her photographs. She has legible handwriting, but it's not perfect, and it's her brand. It looks good. It's her brand. We don't want to make it look like typeface, because otherwise you just have typeface. Okay, so you can practice. Handwriting, like everything else, can be improved. So thank you guys for joining us. I really, I love connecting with you, and I love seeing where you are from all over the world. Do this. Please definitely subscribe. Leave your comments. Share. If you've got friends, tell them about AYP. You don't have to share just this video, but tell them to come to AYP because they're going to learn a lot. Right? Aren't they? Okay. And last but not least, my mantra, remember to get out and capture your own images of life. Stay creative, you guys. Love you, and we'll see you soon.